This woman got sentenced to 120 years in prison, but don't you dare feel bad for her. This woman's name is Brandy Worley. She had a husband and also is the mother of 2 kids. But another thing is, she was cheating on her husband and her husband had finally had enough. He told her that he was going to divorce her, and she knew that if they got divorced, her husband would get full custody of their children because of her infidelity. This was something Brandy could not fathom. So she did the unthinkable. One night, after her husband was already sleeping in the basement, she snuck into her kids' rooms and cut their throats. And then she stabbed herself in the neck and called 911 and told them exactly what she did. When the police got there, the children were both dead, but Brandy was still alive. And they took her to a hospital and saved her life so she could stand trial. And in 2018, Brandy was sentenced to 120 years in prison.
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew. Part 21. This photo shows 8-month-old Zhao Bao, who was lucky to be alive because his mother stabbed him 90 times after he bit her while she was breastfeeding him. The world's scariest haunted house, McCamey Manor, requires you to sign a 40-page waiver and undergo a physical and mental evaluation. If you manage to make it through the house, you could win $20,000. But to this day, no one has ever made it through. The little girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time was shot to death by her father, who then committed suicide. Roman Emperor Nero had a boy castrated, dressed him up as a bride, and married him, all because the boy looked similar to his previous dead wife. A 46-year-old man found and attacked a 13-year-old boy because the kid was killing him too many times in a game of Call of Duty.
So someone finally put out the true crime podcast that we didn't know we needed. It's called Who Shat on the Floor at My Wedding? And it is exactly what you think it is. And if you have a dark curiosity, you might like my own podcast. So the premise is that in 2018, Helen and Karen were getting married on a boat when at one point they walk into the bathroom and see that one of their guests, like one of their best friends, pooped on the floor. And it has nearly ruined their life ever since. Like, they cannot stop thinking about this because they don't know who it was. Also, it was like early in the day, so people weren't really drunk yet, so it's just very confusing. So now, 5 years later, they are doing a multi-episode deep dive to figure out who the culprit is. And they are treating this like a legit true crime podcast. They are hooking bridesmaids up to polygraph tests. They are calling in forensic therapists to analyze the guests. They grill a guest who allegedly spent 4 hours in the bathroom that day. They even enlist the help of a detective who's not really a detective, it's just one of their friends, but she's like us, she just likes the drama of it all. But in a world where true crime is so emotionally taxing, it is very fun to have a podcast like this. This typically does not go well for people. If you want to get up close and touch a hot spring, just know that last year they found a disembodied human foot floating around one of these things. And they think the guy it belonged to was doing the same thing this woman was doing. Like, look at this photo. These edges are not sturdy at all and they go straight down. It hurts to see this because I just did a deep dive on this on the National Park Horror episode of my podcast. But going up and touching these hot springs is not like a quirky, silly thing you do on vacation. Just look at Leia Slayton, who fell into a hot spring in 2021. She was on a trip with her dad when her dog jumped into a hot spring and she jumped in after it. These aren't hot springs that you see at like fancy resorts. The one that she jumped into was 200 degrees Fahrenheit. 70% of her body was covered in second-degree burns. 20% of her body was covered in third-degree burns. She was in the hospital for 4 months and her palms were completely burned off. And she lived, which is amazing because in the 80s, another guy did the same thing, jumped in after a dog, except when he got pulled out, he was completely blind and died shortly after. So yeah, don't be these people. Be these people and collect evidence for the court case that's inevitably going to happen afterwards.
He Googled his name and what happens next will make you quit the internet. There was a guy who out of boredom decided to Google his own name. To his surprise, he stumbled upon a website that had his full name as the domain. Curiosity piqued, he clicked the link and discovered a message board owned by someone with the same name, age, and interest as him. As weeks passed, the website evolved, containing diary entries that mirrored his own life. The guy found it strange that both he and the website owner lived in the same city, sharing a rare name. Strangely, the coincidences only grew stronger. The website owner had a dog with the same name as his childhood pet, posted a picture of a car identical to the one he drove in college, and even mentioned his favorite restaurant from a past job. One day, the guy attended a baseball game and later found out that the website owner had been there too. Intrigued, he decided to leave a message on the website, only to realize it was a static page with no interactive features. So he sent an email to the owner expressing his surprise at the shared name. The following day, the website vanished without a trace. His inbox, however, held a single chilling reply. Found you.
Cannibal Holocaust is so disturbing that it's banned in several countries. It was so hard to find pictures that I could use for this video. Google the title of this movie and look at the images and just look at what comes up. After its premiere in Milan, the judge ordered that the movie was pulled from theaters, and the director was actually charged for obscenity. One scene that got them in really big trouble was a scene where they showed a woman being impaled, and the court had to determine whether it was real or not. They also killed real animals on the screen. It was released in 2001 in the UK after so much was cut. And you see so much more before you see the actual cannibalism. There's murder, torture, genocide, the R word, castration, footage of real life executions. On top of this, the director of the movie treated everyone like shit. Like the cannibals were some tribe, and he didn't care to think about how actual tribes are. He was kind of just being stereotypical. He was really racist towards the people on set. He exploited people, and there was no real intention behind the movie. He made it so he could freak people out. If you like my content, follow my TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube for more. It really helps when you interact.
Okay, we need to talk about Florence Pugh's character in Oppenheimer. So if you don't know, Florence is playing Jean Tatlock, who is the bisexual communist woman who almost ruined Oppenheimer's entire life. Jean was a grad student at Berkeley in 1936, while Oppenheimer, who was 10 years older than her, was a professor. She was pretty sure that she was a lesbian, but thought that she was too feminine to be a lesbian, so she still experimented with men. She also became a staunch communist after she experienced police brutality. And Oppenheimer was obsessed with her. They started seeing each other in 1936, and he would bring her flowers and she wouldn't care, and he asked her to marry him and she said no, and then he asked her again and she said no again. Because Jean saw what the role of the wife was in the 1930s, and she decided she didn't want that for herself. So eventually they break up, but Oppenheimer's working on the atomic bomb at the time, and he ends up calling the first atomic bomb test Trinity, which is named after Jean's favorite poem. And then flash forward a few years later, Oppenheimer is fully married, and Jean calls him up one day. And she tells him that she misses him and she wants to see him again. And mind you, at the time, this man is married. He's also working on building an atomic bomb faster than the Nazis can, and he drops all of it so he can go see her. And they go meet, and the whole time the FBI is tracking this interaction, they had actually been tapping her phones because they need to keep tabs on Oppenheimer. And he knew about it the whole time, and he just didn't care. He was like, whatever, I gotta go see this girl. But that would be the last time they ever saw each other. Unfortunately, she died shortly after that.
One of the strangest missing persons cases I've ever seen revolves around someone that might not even exist. Let me explain. In 1989, a local Chicago television station called WMAQ was wrapping up their regularly scheduled television for the night, when all of a sudden the audio was cut and the image on screen was changed to a strange missing persons panel. The image of the individual shown was too low quality to make out any details, and no information other than the woman's name, Joanna Lopez, were given. The broadcast wouldn't be too out of the ordinary if it wasn't for the fact that she was never mentioned anywhere again. And when people tried to find her, they found no records of a woman named Joanna Lopez in Chicago, even with police filings. So, who was this woman in the broadcast? And how did a missing persons panel for her end up on the news? Well, when the news agency was asked about the panel, they claimed it was sent by an anonymous person, which leaves us with the most likely answer being that it was a prank or an alternate reality game. And as for who was actually in the photo, the lead seems to be a woman by the name of Rachel Lopez. A photo of her was found in a West Chicago yearbook from 1990. And although she has a different first name than Joanna, the fact that they look so similar and share a last name leads many to believe that she could be the one in the photo. Sadly though, it seems like we may never know for sure, as no one has been able to contact the woman in the yearbook.
Tonight's True Crime Time, we have someone who I do have at least one other video about, David Parker Ray, aka the Toy Box Killer. Major trigger warning for this one. This is one of the most disturbing serial killers that I have ever researched, and if you're not new to my page, you know that I've researched a lot of them. On that note, please like, comment, share, let me know if you see this on your For You page, anything to help me get views, and I will appreciate you to the fullest extent of the law. David Parker Ray lived from November 6, 1939 until May 28, 2002. He was an American kidnapper, torturer, rapist, and suspected serial killer. Though no bodies were found, he was accused by his accomplices of killing several women and suspected by the police to have murdered as many as 60 women from Arizona to New Mexico while living in Elephant Butte, approximately 7 miles north of Truth or Consequences. Ray soundproofed a truck trailer which he called his toy box and equipped it with items that he used for sexual torture. He would kidnap between 5 and 6 girls a year, holding each of them captive for around 3 to 4 months. During that time period, he would sexually abuse his victims, sometimes involving his dogs and his wife, who participated willingly in her husband's crimes, and often torture them with surgical instruments. When he decided he was done with them, Ray would either kill his victims or drug them with barbiturates in an attempt to erase their memories of what had happened before abandoning them by the side of the road. He was convicted of kidnapping and torture in 2001, for which he received a lengthy sentence, but he was never convicted of murder. During his childhood, Ray and his younger sister Peggy lived with their disciplinarian grandfather. They were sporadically visited by their violent alcoholic father, who would supply Ray with magazines depicting sadomasochistic pornography. In high school, Ray was bullied by his peers for being shy around girls. His sexual fantasies of raping, torturing, and even murdering women developed during his teenage years, and around this time, his sister discovered his sadomasochistic drawings, as well as pornographic photos of bondage acts. He went on to serve in the army and ended up receiving an honorable discharge. Ray was divorced 4 times and had 2 children, including his accomplice, daughter Jessie Ray. There are documents and tapes from Ray himself that you can read or listen to, but they are not for those with weak stomachs. Sometimes Ray would invite people over and subject the women that he had kidnapped to sex shows involving chaining them to a table and forcing his dogs to rape them. He died of a heart attack in 2002 and is currently rotting in hell.
Let me recount a tragic incident that brought an end to my life. My name is Paul Joe. I had always been known for my daring spirit and often found myself in the company of friends. However, a fateful adventure proved to be fatal. It was a warm summer evening when we gathered for a barbecue, filled with laughter and camaraderie as we enjoyed food and drinks. As the sun began to set, someone introduced firecrackers to add some excitement to the occasion. Unexpectedly, what started as harmless fun quickly turned into a dangerous dare. I was challenged to insert a firecracker into an unconventional place. Being someone who never shied away from a challenge, I accepted, expecting a minor and startling experience. To my utter horror, the resulting explosion was far more devastating than anyone could have anticipated. The immediate aftermath was excruciatingly painful. I had severely injured myself, leaving my rectum wide open and capable of accommodating objects of considerable size. Despite the swift arrival of an ambulance, the injuries proved to be too severe to overcome. The doctor's efforts to reverse the damage proved unsuccessful, and tragically, a few days later, I succumbed to my injuries. The suffering I endured in my final days was immense. My unfortunate story serves as a stark reminder of the importance of exercising caution when engaging in potentially risky behaviors. It is regrettable that I placed my trust in friends who ultimately proved untrustworthy. Tell me in the comments the next story you'd like to see.
I sold human flesh to people, making them believe it was pork. I am Carl Denke, renowned for my peculiar behavior and reclusive tendencies. However, nobody was aware that I harbored a sinister secret. It all began in 1984, when a young man named Ernst Lawson sought refuge with me. He was in search of employment and a place to stay, and I provided him with both. However, one fateful night, something within me snapped, and I took his life. Uncertain about how to dispose of the body, I couldn't bear to let it go to waste. Consequently, I preserved the flesh and stored it in barrels within my cellar. Little did I know that this was merely the commencement of a horrifying spree. Subsequently, I started luring individuals to my abode by enticing them with promises of food or work. Once they arrived, I would take their lives and utilize their bodies as a source of sustenance. The exhilaration derived from each kill, coupled with the gratification of my twisted desires, led me to believe that I was impervious to capture. However, rumors began to circulate, eventually alerting the authorities. They conducted a search of my residence, uncovering the barrels containing human remains. Additionally, they stumbled upon my notebook, which listed the names of other missing individuals. Subsequently, I was apprehended, charged with multiple counts of murder, and the ensuing trial caused a sensation in Germany. The entirety of the world was horrified by the profound depths of my depravity. Ultimately, I was found guilty and sentenced to death. On the day of my execution, I maintained a stoic silence, carrying the secrets of my crimes with me into the realm of obscurity. Gazing upon the crowd of spectators, a sense of tranquility washed over me, knowing that my reign of terror had reached its conclusion.
This college girl's nightmare turns into a heart-pounding fight for survival. In the middle of the night, a college girl is jolted awake covered in sweat. She had just experienced a terrifying nightmare. Determined to wash away her fears, she rushed to the bathroom for a quick shower. Placing her phone on the shelf, she turned on some music to calm her nerves, but little did she know a lurking danger awaited her. As the water cascaded down, the girl reached for her phone, intending to change the song. But in that pivotal moment, she froze. Reflected on the screen was a mysterious figure standing motionless in the bathroom facing the shower. Fear gripped her heart, yet she managed to keep her composure. Without hesitation, she twisted the shower knob, unleashing scalding hot water. The intruder let out a piercing scream as the girl tore open the shower curtain and drenched her down. Seizing the opportunity, she sprinted past the intruder, desperate for a means to defend herself. She rushed to the kitchen, searching for her trusted butcher's knife, but it seemed to have vanished. She fled from the apartment and dialed 911. The police entered her apartment, and moments later they emerged with a disheveled woman, her eyes wild with madness, cuffed tightly. Approaching the shaken college girl, one of the officers revealed the shocking truth. The intruder was no stranger. She used to live in the same apartment, secretly holding copies of the girl's keys. The officers produced a clear evidence bag containing the missing butcher's knife. It became clear that the deranged woman had sought to reclaim her former home. Follow, because my next story is even scarier. This boy mysteriously vanishes on Rome Mountain, only to reappear with a chilling tale that defies all logic. In the year 1983, on Rome Mountain in North Carolina, a young boy vanishes without a trace. His family was camping with his mom, sent him to fetch some water from a nearby well. But when he didn't return, panic set in. Frantically, a search party was organized, scouring the mountain in desperate hopes of locating the missing boy. Then, on the seventh day, an astonishing twist occurred. Out of nowhere, the boy reappeared standing atop the mountain as if materializing from thin air. The search party, overwhelmed with relief, bombarded him with questions. Where had he been all this time, and how did he survive? Well, the boy's tale was baffling. He recounted being at the well when a faceless figure approached him. This mysterious being scooped him up and speared him away to a hidden cabin high on top of the mountain. The boy described this cabin in remarkable detail, providing precise directions. Eager to apprehend the person responsible, the police were ready to storm the mountain and locate the cabin. However, their enthusiasm was dampened whenever the park superintendent, a seasoned veteran of 40 years, calmly intervened, asserting there are no cabins on Rome Mountain. Confusion and intrigue set in. How could the boy describe a cabin that supposedly didn't exist? Was it a figment of his imagination or something more sinister? Follow, because my next story is even crazier. The fact that this story is true makes it that much more terrifying. A young mom was walking down a dark street with her two kids. As they stroll along, a stranger approaches them and starts talking about their Christmas plans. Well, the kids, innocent and excited, chatted away about Santa and family time and beautiful decorations in their house. Well, this is where things turn creepy. Something didn't feel right to the mom, so she picked up her pace. But the man kept asking about their house. And when they were only 10 houses away, he asked a even more horrifying question. Is your dad home? That night, the dad was actually away at a conference, and the little sister quickly told the man that he was not. And when they reached the front yard, the man rushed towards their door, speaking in a creepy but sweet voice, asking, "Can I see the decorations?" The mom locked the door, feeling him push from the other side. She turned off the lights and took her kids upstairs, but they could still hear the man pacing and knocking outside. The man's request turned into a scary demand. "Let me in to see the decorations." The mom called her husband, who immediately rushed home, but when he got there, the man was gone. Do you think that he only wanted to see the decorations? Be sure to smash the like button and follow, because my next story is even crazier.